So if you're in practice today as a financial planner or a financial advisor, this episode is going to blow your hair back. My guest this morning is Ian van Schoor, the CEO and founder of Adviceworx, and I'm really looking forward to chatting to him. And we're going to get into all of the major events, trends, and things that are shaping the advisory landscape. And one of the things that I noticed definitely is how quickly things are changing, and they are continuously changing. And keeping abreast and keeping up is extremely important when you are in practice and understanding where things are going. And in my mind, doesn't matter whether you are an IFA, but particularly when you're an IFA, and then even if you are tied and you're working maybe in a franchise model, there are loads of things that you need to be aware of. What is driving all these changes and where they come from? I'm going to get into some interesting questions, sort of looking at where things are going, how the business models support this. And then I want to ask Ian, if Ian was to do this, like if he has to start a small practice today, what would Ian do? So join us for this morning. Really looking forward to this. And let's get into the show.
This is Propulsion, the podcast for forward-thinking and driven and ambitious financial planning professionals. It is the catalyst to the exponential growth of your financial planning practice, your business, or your franchise. This is where professionals come in order to learn about the latest technology, to learn about best practice when it comes to running and managing their business, as well as marketing, sales, relationship building, the best and most valuable interviews with local and international guests, and a whole host of other things. Without any further ado, here is your host, Francois du Toit.
Alrighty, so Ian, back in 2011, left Liberty at that point in time. He has been a third generation from his family that have been serving the Standard Bank Group over many, many years. And after 19 years at the Standard Bank Group and Liberty, he decided to venture off, go sit on a beach, write a business plan, go fetch some capital, and he started Adviceworx together with some of the guys in his team. And today I just heard recently that the last member from that original team has now also joined Adviceworx. So everybody's now at Adviceworx, and they've really built an incredible business. I've been fortunate to host some of their conferences or MC some of their conferences, and you get to hear a little bit of things that obviously you can't always talk about because it's inside stuff. But it's amazing, like what they're building, their vision, where they're going has been absolutely incredible for me. And it's a big, big honor. I mean, they've now got 150 partners, as they call them, 150 practices that operate within their framework. They've got about 60 offices around the country. They're managing like 40 billion rand in assets under management. So absolutely incredible what they've done since 2013 when they got going. So Ian van Schoor, a warm welcome to Propulsion Live this morning.
Thanks, Francois. Good morning. How's it?
Good stuff. Do you also get like when people introduce me, I get like uncomfortable sometimes. Is that okay for you?
No, I'm more nervous about talking to Norma about self-control. I think that would be a much bigger problem. I'm fine with you, Francois. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, as I said, a warm welcome. Thank you for your time. I want to get into it because we've got a lot that I want to talk to you about this morning. And there are some great insights here and things. And obviously this is all about the changing advisory landscape. It's something I spoke about in the last two episodes to some degree as well. But today we can really get into what are driving these things and what are you seeing from where you're sitting and building the kind of business that you are. I think you may be noticing trends that some of us that's maybe closer to the ground in some sense don't always see because we don't go that high to see what's happening over the horizon, for example. So I want to start off with the changing advisory landscape. And my question is, what is the main driver at the moment? Like, is it the profession itself doing great stuff and this is causing this to evolve? Or is it the consumer that's driving this? Or are there certain events that's happened? I mean, what are the things that are driving the change that we're experiencing currently?
Yeah, Francois, it's an interesting one because I think we started noticing some change back in kind of 2000, or I started in about 2010, 11. You know, we started seeing definitely I suppose what you'd call a tilt in the landscape as new capital regulations were hitting South Africa, SAM and Basel. And, you know, the new capital regs, following new capital regulation, you usually see a change in distribution regulation, and that was coming in RDR. So I don't think it started now. I think it started way back. Some of that was the reason why we actually wanted to start a company like Adviceworx. But I think today, the change is much more profound in the sense that it's that complemented by a whole lot of other things. So I think we've got huge event-driven factors influencing the change in advice landscape. So, I mean, if you just think of COVID and the client engagement models, if you think about even the service models by product providers today, these hybrid models, everyone thinks they're great. Sure, I went into a product provider the other day and I had to send them a note and tell them that I thought they were closed for business. So some of these things, that's event-driven. I think capital markets have been tough. We've been through a terrible socioeconomic kind of time over the last 10 years from a South African perspective. I think capital market performances are having a big impact on the way consumers are behaving. I think, even at the advisor level, commission rates have fallen. It's much harder, and I think the cost of doing business. So we got a wave of, and not necessarily it's probably the right stuff, but it introduces costs. So a wave of compliance-driven regulation. You think of POPI, you think of AML. All these things are coming, and then the digital era has created its own set of challenges. So, just the massive increase in cybercrime, fraud, and the cost of encryption and data security. It's pretty hectic. And then we've got load shedding. So that's not great. So we've got load shedding on top of that. I mean, I think for small businesses it's tough. And then you just look at the regulatory environment. So audio, I think, is a big positive. So we're trending there, but it's been slow. But I think the internationalization and the regulation driving internationalization of assets, which again I think is positive. So from the right place, but it's really changing the way advisors have to, I suppose, equip themselves and create, international capabilities that are robust. So they're having to reinvent themselves. So, and then we've got this thing that I call the Great Resignation out of the US, which is people moving. I'm seeing a decorporatization trend as people are going, what's the meaning of life? I want to be in an owner-managed business. So you're seeing all of these things. On top of that, claims increase. The relevance and importance of health and insurance just through an epidemic. I mean, so all these things are hitting. I think they're hitting financial advisor businesses, head on. So I think we've seen some long-term structural change, and now a whole lot of event-driven stuff impacting everyone.
Yeah, no, I think in some way, shape, or form, it feels like COVID was the trigger, but it wasn't. It's just like, I think it has accelerated many of these things. These things have always been around, so it's either accelerated them or it's magnified them almost, or I don't know if boosted is the right word, but just made them bigger than what they were going to be at this point in time, probably. And I've been meeting now with a lot of small FSPs at the moment and having interesting conversations with them. I mean, I'm thinking about something like you talk about how we've gone digital and the virtual and the hybrid thing is, data, and how concerned the small IFA is about data and the data security, because like even in my business, right, I sit with a lot of data and things, but I don't have the knowledge to make sure that this is behind a proper login and it's so locked away that nobody can get to it. And yet even those businesses sometimes still do get hacked that do have those kind of things. But I mean, that is a major thing. And this comes at a cost. Yesterday I was meeting with somebody saying, they're paying so much for their IT people. And I'm like, holy moly, that's a lot of money. And they're small FSP, so there's a lot of costs that have come as a result of these things. And we don't have a choice. I don't know, like you either need to get on board or get out almost. You don't have a choice. So you can either decide you're going to weather the storm and sort this out yourself, or you can decide to make other moves, or you can decide like I've had enough. And for most of us, we haven't had enough. We're still here for the fight. And but these things are absolutely critical. Just maybe quickly from the role of technology, just very quickly. I mean, it is great the fact that we can meet like this now. And I mean, if I had to go this morning to your office or you had to come to my studio kind of thing, you would have cursed more because it's all this further driving, it's all this stuff. So there's some benefits there, but also then from a technology that enables this kind of thing. I mean, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen that, is this something because the consumer wants this? Or is this something that we now decided, yes, I can save a lot on fuel. I don't need to drive to clients anymore. Like this whole technology versus productivity versus being hybrid thing, like just your view on that.
Yeah, Francois, I think there are two pieces to that. So I think there's the digital client piece, or the engagement piece. Yeah, I think it's here to stay. I don't think that. I think it's come through the COVID era, as you said, but I think the digital engagement pieces are here to stay, and I think the organisations that had embraced, call it the future of client engagement, we're in probably a very strong position as you went into COVID, and have probably done quite well. I think the trick going forward is how you humanise that. So it's great, that we replace face-to-face on an engagement basis, but I think you've got to humanise it. So how you touch customers, product providers, everyone. I think you've got to work out how you humanise it. So yeah, I think it's here to stay. I think it's changed stuff permanently. But the second piece on technology, it's not just about the engagement pieces. I think technology, insofar as its role, and I see your new summit, your announcement on the 6th and 7th of March is spot on. I mean, I think technology itself and the role of technology in everybody's operating model is just somersaulted, because as we see all this change, you've got to become more efficient. You just have to. Yeah. And if you go down the technology road a little bit, I think each what I've learned over the last few years is just how different each practice is. So every advisor practice is unique. So what a technology solution that might work for, I don't know, person A isn't necessarily right for person B. So the technology pieces are quite tricky, because I think they're built these days in component parts. So you find tech that's created for a piece of the value chain. So as you look at your operating model, you've got to be quite clear about what you want, and then you adopt technology that suits you. But I don't think that's I don't think that's sort of the holy grail in the technology debate anymore. I think component technology is important, but I think it's moved beyond that. I think the integration technology between components is where the real efficiency lies. So the businesses, a financial advisor today, I don't think he's just got to be good at understanding his own practice and understanding the technical part of a component of a technology kind of improvement that he wants to make in his business. He's got to understand data and technology architecture, because it's how he pieces it together. So I listen to these technology debates a lot, and Stuart Porrell's quite outspoken on it, which is always quite amusing, to be honest. But yeah. I think his stuff is all about integration. So if we've learned one thing on the technology piece over the last 10 years, it's about the integration between the component parts that really set you free and create the efficiencies. So for an advisor sitting at the back, in his business, not only does he have to understand the component parts, how it works, what the outcome's going to be, he needs to have a unique understanding of his own peculiarities in his practice, but he's got to understand the architecture. And Francois, that's hard. So it doesn't surprise me why the technology debate reigns on. Is there an ultimate answer? There probably isn't. The ultimate answer for me doesn't lie in one technology solution. It lies in the ability to integrate all of the pieces you apply. So for us, that's been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting, because there's a couple of things involved in that process, and where the hardness comes in, or the challenge comes in, or the frustration comes in for the smaller business is also, and I had these discussions plenty of times the last 2 weeks, is they don't have the resources, they don't have the time, they are already a slave in their business, they almost feel like a prisoner. And now, when must I get time to do this stuff and figure this out and learn the technology and all of this kind of? And it's actually it's weird, because the technology is the one thing that can give you back your time, but it's first going to take a lot of time before it gives you back time. So it's sort of a two-way street there, and some sacrifice that needs to happen. Let's get into some. Yeah, you want to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's the oldest debate in the world, So when do I stop and invest to create a future benefit? So my advice is that the technology changes are just the improvements have created an opportunity for, to professionalize a practice, it's come on in leaps and bounds. Actually, I think you have to do it now, because I think you're going to get left so far behind. So I think you actually have to make the investment of time, Francois, for every advisor. If there's one piece of advice, our experience has taught us anyway, is make the technology investments now. Don't wait. I don't think you can afford to.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you call them investments, because I've been harping on it. It's not a cost; it's an investment for the right technology. It's not.
Absolutely.
And also that sounds to me like advice that works. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
I see what you did there.
I was sharp, eh? I want to get into some major trends. I mean, this thing that we just discussed, the technology is absolutely one of them. But another big thing is sort of the polarization between different models, because as I mentioned earlier, people have got to make a choice. Do I stay in my business? Do I join another business? Do I go tight? Do I leave the industry? What do I do? But that's one part of this. What are you seeing from, like, how do people, because polarization means I either go here or I go there. There's not much in between. There's literally like one of two things. And what are you seeing from that point?
Yeah, Francois, I think we've been seeing that for a while. I mean, I think the socioeconomic stuff has I think it's been hard on consumers and investors. So I think people are they're a lot more conscious about saving. So the market performance, capital markets performance, COVID, whatever, all those factors we were talking about earlier, I think have made people much more aware of the need to be conscious about the way they save. And so what we're definitely seeing is a polarization of different models. So we're seeing what I'd probably call deep-seated advice and relationship models on the one hand. And I think that's right for a certain segment of markets. And then we're seeing, so advisors either go that way or they're trending into what I'd call much more needs-based, production-orientated financial planning. So, and neither model is necessarily right from a commercial perspective. I guess it's going to come back to your value system. What is it you want to build with clients? So, if you want to do financial planning and solve for needs, that's fine. It's much more transactional orientated, and maybe you're good at it. Other people might have a different approach, So we're definitely seeing consumers, or a big segment of consumers, move towards deep-seated advice models. So they're placing much greater emphasis on quality of advice, and I think that category of consumer is very focused on who their advisor is and what their processes are, and with that, probably more holistic-based financial planning. So lifestyle financial planning, I think, is a wave and a trend that's been forced through. Well, maybe as a consequence of the necessity of people being of it becoming more important to manage your savings pool better. So definitely those two poles, or that polarization, we're definitely seeing, and we've been seeing that for quite a while.
Yeah. And as you said, I guess when you start any kind of business, you need to decide on a commercial model, business model that sits behind that. And I want to get into a question around that a little bit later. But I think that's ultimately, and whether you then go and say, oh, I only work with this type of client, or I work with everybody, which I don't always believe working with everybody is such a good idea when you're small. I think ultimately what will happen is you start out small, you work with a very specific group, and as you grow, and if you grow a bigger business, you'll tend to start working. Like, I always think about Amazon. So they started off just doing books, and as they grew, they now do freaking everything everywhere in the world. So it's just one of those consequences of building a big business. But when you start off, you can't be everything to everyone. You need to decide, to be everything to someone. I think we spoke about that when the Money and Medicine guys were on here. But ultimately, that's the important thing. And too often, specifically people that focus a lot on the human side and the people and the advice and the relationship versus the transactional kind of approach that you just mentioned, is that they do want to help everybody. They almost feel obligated, to help everybody in the same way. So I think that's also where technology can play a big role. And say, if that's what's in your heart and that's what you want to do, it doesn't make it wrong. You could be more efficient. You could be looking after less clients with bigger returns on your time and whatever. But ultimately, you might also use technology to serve those people that is not so profitable, and you still fulfill that sort of need. So I think that's also a big part of this, because some of these things that one wants to do and that's on your heart is not always profitable. And I think that's that's the hard thing, like specifically when you're a smaller business. Anyway, I just want to throw that in. I'll get to the question in a second, or in a minute or so. Then the whole thing, you mentioned this earlier about going digital engagement specifically. I mean, what are you seeing what's happening in Adviceworx, for example, where you have advisors across the spectrum, so from a face-to-face meeting with a client point of view versus just doing it digitally versus having sort of a hybrid model, where do you think the answer lies? And what are you seeing, or what are consumers wanting? What are your customers looking for from that point?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think the answers are not clear, Francois. So we're seeing a bit of both. We're seeing a lot of advisors wanting to get back to events face-to-face, clients and advisors. And then we're seeing a whole other group where they've actually quite liked the digital engagement now. I think the fundamentals are you need to be able to give clients options. So I think you've got to offer both. I don't think that there's a one size fits all anymore. I think this digital kind of engagement is absolutely, it's repivoted the starting point. So the one piece that I'm absolutely clear about, and it has been a standout for us too, is responsible and accessible. I think you've got to be, not responsible, responsive. Responsible probably important too, but responsive and accessible, I think are the key. So the client communication pieces today are 10 times more important than the client communication pieces of yesteryear. So in other words, and a big barometer for us is how many people are reading our automated client communications, Francois. So I mean, a few years ago, we were seeing the same as kind of product providers, of your client base, 60-70% would be trailing through your monthly or daily or weekly client comms, which has to be digital these days. I mean, it's got to land in an inbox or on a cell phone. Now we're up to over 90%, but I think that takes time. So I think how you touch that customer, I think you've got to create options. How you touch that customer has got to be unique to what the client wants. Advisors themselves are trying to work this out. So I don't think the answer is clear yet. What I am clear about is you've got to provide options on digital engagement and complement it certainly with face-to-face events. And the key critical thing is you've got to be able to touch these clients. I think we can touch a client now 80 times a year without seeing them once. That doesn't mean you mustn't see them once. You've got to, but you've got to have that capability. I think it just creates trust and confidence at the client end, particularly if you can complement that, with a sense that you're accessible and you're responsive. I think it makes a huge difference.
And I guess a telling metric in that is because let's just say, for example, touching a client 80 times through various different means and ways and things that you can do, of which one or two or three of them or 10 of them might be meeting like this. If you say seeing, you mean in person. But I mean, just from that point, I think a telling metric would be how much does the client engage back with you, or like how many times do they touch you, basically. I think that's a telling tale, because we can send things 80 times a year to them, but if we never get a response, you never get a reaction, then, we should probably be asking questions. I mean, is that something you agree with, or what is your view on that?
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to ask me the data question a little bit later, so I'm going to save that for then. But absolutely, you've got to be monitoring your client engagement. So as you move towards becoming more client experience oriented, if you don't have the data to measure how responsive you really are or how responsive they are, you're kind of lost in the wilderness, aren't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So just quickly, I don't want to harp on this trend too much, but I mean, there's been a major shift in the focus of the industry. What are you seeing from that point of view? Just briefly.
You mean about when you say focus, advisor practice focus? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So if you talk advisor operating and client service and engagement models, those kind of things.
Yeah, I've noticed a sea change, Francois, and I've noticed it on your show. I mean, I noticed it in your announcement just now. If you go back and have a look at all the summits and I don't know, let's just call them the events. you go back a few years ago, and all the events were kind of focused on high macro planning issues and alpha generation by, how good is that investment manager on generating alpha? Who's the best underwriter? I think the emphasis has changed completely. I think we're seeing a much deeper focus on advisor operating models, technology in how advisors are adopting and restructuring their businesses to better service clients. I think just go and have a look at the agendas. I mean, it's a different discussion. And if you boil it down, I think what a whole lot of people have realized is that the emphasis for financial advisor practices is how you better serve the client. And I think that's fantastic. The advice pieces are important. Who's generating great alpha is important, but it's a small part of advice. It's an important part, but much more important, I think, is how you structured and how you've positioned your business to better service your client. Definitely seeing it on your show, seeing it in Financial Planning Summit, seeing it across the board. So very much more client centric and around how advisors can better serve them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the focus has definitely shifted, because I don't know, previously practice management stuff wasn't something that was you talk about that. I don't know, everybody, it's like paraplanning, and there's a few things in this profession where everybody's got their own definition of what that means. But we've been harping on about, and at the summit we actually spoke about, you and I, a little bit in that panel around the importance of managing your business like a business, even if you're a one-man, one-woman show. Like, you've got to put that hat on. You've got to have the systems and the processes in place. Maybe not to the degree that an Adviceworx would have, for example, but you need those things in order to build a business of value. But my next question is around, and I had a discussion with someone yesterday, very interesting enough, like, how many clients are currently leaving South Africa? And do I know people in the UK, for example, that can help his clients to, just so that he knows they will be taken care of, they will be in good hands, they don't need to go to some website somewhere. And this is something that's definitely happening. So what are you seeing from an immigration? I think you put it so eloquently earlier. It's not only clients, it's also their wealth. It's the money that's immigrating as well. So sometimes people are maybe staying here but sending their money offshore, and other times both of them are leaving. So what are you seeing from that perspective?
It's a tough one, Francois, but there are probably a couple of pieces to it. So definitely, regulation trending to permit greater internationalization of assets. I think that's good. But what it means for financial advisors, they need to professionalize their skills and capabilities to manage that. So greater exposure to offshore assets. You're going to have to build a deeper competence as an advisor to give great advice on your international portfolio. So I think that's one. I think we're seeing a very interesting trend. Well, two other ones, but the other one we're seeing is a lot of wealthy South Africans immigrate, but they want to keep their South African advisor. It's a great trend. We like it. And I think it comes from historic trust, confidence. But that means you've now got to create a capability where a South African-based advisor's got to provide advice, call it digital engagement, because you can't see someone every day, digital engagement with somebody that's immigrated, and continue to provide a professional service. So that capability and ability to do that. So call it a much more robust international capability is important. And then the third piece that's very interesting is we've got advisors immigrating outside of South Africa, looking after their South African client bases. So we've now got guys in Belgium, Portugal. I don't know. Some of our advisors seem to love Mauritius. I keep on going, wow, okay, guys. And then you've got to go paperless. You've got to go digital. Your operating models have got to work. So we're definitely seeing a trend where advisors come back. So they work in these mobile models. They come back, but they've got to be efficient, right? They come back and see their clients in an engagement process. Otherwise, they're touching them differently. I was asked the other day, what we expect to see over the next few years. It wouldn't surprise me if 25% of our advisor base is in call it a domicile outside of South Africa in the next 3 to 5 years. 25% is a lot. So I think you've got to enable that, and we've got to be mindful of that. And that's about sustainability. So big trend.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people, I guess, are just moving from Joburg down to Cape Town, which is almost also like working from, somewhere else. So it is, and I've had these discussions many a time as well, where people, is it possible? Can I do that? All my clients are sitting here.
Yeah.
And I guess...
Sorry, I think you can, Francois. So we've seen lots of that. So the intra-South Africa move, I think, is easy if you create an operating model that enables that. I think the harder ones are as soon as you go cross-border, it gets tricky.
Sure. And specifically, if you, I think when you stay here and clients leave and they move to the Portugals and those places, and then, are you allowed to give advice from here, or can you only look after South African things? So it's not only having a capability to maybe do transactions that kind, but to actually dispense advice over there as well. So there's a lot of moving parts to that. The last sort of major trend I just quickly want to talk about, Ian, is just in the interest of time, is succession. Obviously, it is a big thing that we've been talking about a little bit on the show the last couple of episodes. There's some episodes coming up. We're going to delve a little bit deeper into all of that as well. But I'm curious from your point of view, succession, what are the trends in succession? There's certain things that I've seen, and I've certainly seen an uptick on this, because every week somebody on LinkedIn is saying, oh, we bought this book. Oh, we merged with this one. Oh, we did that. We see it now every week. It's not oh, that's cool. It's not even cool anymore. It's just everybody's doing it. So what are you seeing from that point that people need to take note of?
Yeah, probably a caution, Francois. The worst succession model I think you can have is where you're trying to negotiate your succession when you want to leave. So I think you've got to have, I think succession models are becoming absolutely critical, and it doesn't, if you think of all the changes, people immigrating, I think succession models are, and we've been saying it for a long time, are becoming fundamental. Succession, I think, has to be managed very carefully. But I think a succession model is not something you decide at the last minute just before you want to retire or leave. I think a succession model needs very careful. It needs to be architected really carefully. I think it's got to be determined up front, and a succession plan takes a long time. So, and I think you mentioned it earlier, we found this massive emergence of practice management, which you were talking about just now. So a practice management framework for us, practice management, when you talk to people, you start seeing people yawn, and you just couldn't get it going. But as soon as you link practice management to the quality of a business, and the quality of a business informs your succession model and your succession value. So you almost intertwine the two. Integrate again is maybe the operative word. If you can create an ability to formalize a qualitative ongoing assessment of a practice, so the quality of the practice, to inform succession, we've seen an explosion in practice management. So people just focusing on building better businesses because it becomes so important in your succession transaction. And then I hope you're not going to ask me about data, because data then becomes critical. So let me jump ahead of you there quickly. If you haven't built the data engines to actually analyze the information flow in practices, it's very hard to build a qualitative assessment to a practice. So our biggest investments at the moment are in data architecture. And then you need to almost create AI or algorithms, or if you like, some kind of data integration or architecture engine that can deliver intelligent data, so that you can actually digest that data, come up and give a credible, reliable, qualitative assessment of a practice that advisors can rely on to make a succession acquisition, or particularly for buyers. They need to know what they're buying. So those have become interlinked: practice management, succession, data management. I think the big relief in the data piece, maybe it's not relief, maybe it's the trend. It's the biggest trend we're seeing, Francois, is data analysis, intelligent data. I think it's still at the advisor level, but for businesses migrating to client experience, it's going to evolve there. So that's where we're investing all of our, if you like, big capital and time and effort is actually in client data, because we think the next step is going to be in the the client engagement and experience models. And it was your question earlier. You've got to know what clients are saying. So sorry, I jumped ahead of you there before you caught me on data. But I think those three things are becoming absolutely critical. And everybody has always thought about them slightly differently. I think that they're kind of juxtaposed and critical, I think, in that succession transaction. At the end of the day, if you run an independent financial advisor business and you want to retire one day, you want to know what your business is worth. So I think these succession models are set to become probably the most profound part of an advisor proposition going forward.
Yeah. And there's it's just two quick things that I want to add there. The one is that you want the data to come alive and show you the story it's telling, because looking at the data is not going to give you that. So you need that sort of pictures and sort of things that you can really make sense of this data that you're looking at. Otherwise, it's just a lot of numbers swimming. But also, often it doesn't matter whether you're, again, a one-man, one-woman business. You need the data, right? So in a business like Adviceworx, for example, I mean, you can invest heavily into this, and you do, and there's a bigger game behind that. The small guy goes like, geez, like I can't afford someone to do this for me or what. There are solutions that at the very least, if you want to manage any kind of data, because it doesn't help you saying you've got a great business. You've got to be able to prove that you've got a good business. And the only way to do that is data, because you can't argue with the data. Is start with revenue management. So if you look at those kind of things, understand your revenue, and having commission statements coming from all over in a spreadsheet is not going to give you that. So that's one place to start, would be my advice for the smaller IFA. So cool stuff. I don't have to ask you the data question. We're all good, Ian. I want to quickly, there's two other questions I want to ask you. The one thing is just something that I've been noticing a lot over years, not just now suddenly. It's because being advice-led and being client-centric and focusing on the human side of things, et cetera, those things are now common day, sort of the new thing for many people. But one of the things that I've seen before with many of the corporates, they start using these words because that's what clients want to hear, that's what advisors want to hear, but you look under the hood, and then ultimately the business model, in other words, how the business generates revenue, isn't directly linked to that. Because the way that the industry and even the profession still works from a revenue point of view today is either commissions, it's assets under management. There's a small percentage of people charging fees, and charging fees successfully. In most cases, they only charge a portion of their clients, probably a fee. And often they just fee-based, right? So it's not fee only. And I've said many times on the show is that it's also not about how you get paid. You can't distinguish your business through how you get paid. So whether a client decides they're happy to pay commission, or they're happy to do it assets under management, or they just want to pay a fee, I mean, that's up to the client. It doesn't make your business better than someone else's business. But we also know that how you generate revenue is driven by the actions that you take and what you focus on, et cetera, et cetera. So in my mind, there's a disconnect between the two still today, and there's a big disconnect. But I'm keen to sort of hear what you're saying, because there's definitely this thing where people are focusing much more on the client. They're putting them first, the client experience, all that stuff. But how does the business model, or how can the business model support that? Because I think most people's challenge is, how the hell do I now make money offering this new value to a client? Because most clients are not willing to pay for it, from my experience.
Yeah, it's a great question and a tough one, to be honest, Francois. I think you've got to know what you want to be. So that's the starting point. And when I say you've got to know what you want to be, I think from a client perspective, not from a commercial perspective. So you've got to start off saying, well, what is it I want to be to clients? And then I think you've got to work a commercial model after that. So I don't think you must do it the other way around, and that's quite an important point. I also think that quite a few advisors are trying to distinguish themselves in their charging structures. I'm not sure that's the answer. So differentiation is obviously important. I think you've got to be authentic. I think you've got to work out what you want to be at a client level, and then you've got to build your commercial model off the back of that. So by way of example, Adviceworx philosophy, we offer fee-based and commission-based. But very much service fee orientated. So we're very much about deepening the client experience. Our view is if you want to deliver a quality advice outcome for a client, it's very expensive. You need technology, you need integrated technology, you need great people, you need paraplanners, it's an expensive model. But we're not shy about the fact that we're happy to charge, trail fees that some might regard as quite high. But here's the point. We absolutely promise to deliver the client experience and a quality client experience. So we're not trying to provide a Woolworths service and pay a checker's price. Absolutely not. We are proudly about delivering a quality of advice process, but then you better deliver that, and that better be in your promise, but then charge accordingly. So Francois, I don't think it's a universal point that every client wants a lower fee. It depends what proposition you're providing and what service you're providing and what resources you're putting, how professional you are in your engagement. If I look at just the UK and what commission models have done in the UK at an advice level, more and more those are the types of commission lines that are holding up. You're seeing a contraction of portfolio management fees, other providers on in the value chain. But if you're delivering a quality service, you need to charge for the service you're charging. So I think the long story short, work out your client service model, charge accordingly, but then you make sure you deliver what you promise.
Like any good business would, right?
I thought so.
Yeah. It's actually, it makes sense. And again, I just want to reiterate, it's not about how you get paid. It's like, can you deliver the value, and is it worth the price you're charging? How they pay you for that, you need to be able to prove that you're worth what you get paid. How you get paid is actually irrelevant in that sense.
That's perfectly put.
Thank you, Ian. I had some time to think about it when you were talking. So, Ian, here's the question to you. Right. If you were to start a practice today, but you're not allowed, or you can't build an Adviceworx, right? So you can't go out, get capital, have a great business plan. You can still have a great business plan, but you must either self-fund or start with nothing. How would Ian do that today?
I'm gonna cross swords you there, Francois. I'd say I'd join a network like Adviceworx and build it from there. But I know that's not really your question. So
well, that is one of the options, right? So
I beg your pardon?
I said that's one of the options. So
absolutely. It's getting so expensive that honestly, if you want the capabilities, I really would. I would join a network where I can tap into capabilities. But if I had to start, I think your question really is, if I had to start a small business as an advisor today, what would I do? I think the first thing I'd do is sit down and spend a lot of time, and I'm not sure everybody does this, and I would strategically work out what I wanted to build. And I would be very deliberate about that, taking into account technology, integration, those kind of pieces. I would, and the digital piece. I'd think very carefully about how I was going to service clients. The second piece is I'd go out and I'd find the right people to help me do that. Absolutely. And I'm not talking about 100. It might be one or two people. I would definitely not do this alone. I would do this in conjunction with some skills, just to, even if it's just to bounce stuff. So people, I think, is important. And then I'd be very, very deliberate about selecting preferred providers. I would choose a selection of preferred providers. I would digitalize it as much as I could. I'd embrace the new technology pieces, and I'd build it with a couple of good people. I wouldn't do it by myself. And that's what I'd do, Francois. I would start like that. I don't know if that helps, but I'd start like that.
No, that's amazing. And I think you've touched on a couple of very valuable points there. Know what you're building, know where you're going, do it with great people, consider the technology, and I can't remember, there was one other thing you said now, which the preferred providers. Those are the big things, because a lot of people feel if you're independent, you have to have contracts with the world, and that's absolutely not true. So those was extremely valuable. Thank you very much, Ian. Sure. Ian, if anybody wants to get in touch, or how do they get in touch with you or with Adviceworx? What would be easiest?
Yeah, I mean, Francois. So the website's there. There's an open common portal. Anybody who would like to ask any questions, please feel free. Absolutely.
Cool stuff. Ian, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. It was awesome speaking to you. The time flew by. We're a little bit over time, but nobody minds because it was so valuable. So thank you very much, and I hope to do this again in the future. Thanks,
Francois. Thanks very much for hosting me. Thanks very much.
It's a big pleasure. Thank you, Ian. I literally have got goosebumps, like it was a lacquer discussion. Thanks again to Ian for his time and for all the insights. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll be back. You guessed it. Next week, same time, same place. Stay safe, be blessed and prosper. And remember to always continue to raise that bar.
Thank you for listening. Remember to check out the live show, Propulsion Live, on YouTube every Friday at 7 a.m. South African time. You can find it at www.propulsion.co.za/live. That's propulsion.co.za/live. And please remember to subscribe, share with your colleagues, your friends, and anyone who may find value like you did in this podcast. Once again, thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.